turnout. There's a few seats up front here. If those of you that are in the back would like to come up, you might get a chance to have a seat up front. First of all, I'd like to start out. My name is Marcia Grigsby, and I'm the city manager for the city of Dublin. On behalf of City Council and the city administration, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for coming out tonight and for attending the Bridge Street Scioto River Corridor Community Forum that we're holding this evening on this important initiative of the cities. First, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Dublin City Council members, many of whom are here tonight, for their vision in establishing the Bridge Street District as one of their City Council goals and initiatives in developing the future of the city. Also, I'd like to thank the Planning and Zoning Commission members and the other members of the boards and commissions in the city for their interest and their efforts in the Bridge Street District and developing the river corridor. It was about a year ago that Dublin City Council made a strategic decision to focus the development efforts on the Scioto River corridor within the Bridge Street District. We shared some of those preliminary visions and plans with the community at our State of the City that we held last March. And since that time, we've advanced in the planning and the design of the redevelopment of the river corridor. In addition to acquiring key real estate parcels that occurred in late 2012 and earlier this year, the city recently, City Council approved our 5-year capital improvement plan, which included over $40 million of investment in the Bridge Street Corridor District. And focus on that with the river corridor for the projects such as the realignment of Riverside Drive, the 2 parks on both sides of the river, the roundabout at State Route 161 and Riverside Drive, and the iconic pedestrian bridge that you're going to hear about later. Tonight, we're going to share concepts and emerging plans for both the public improvements, the parks, the bridge, the roundabout, as well as the potential private development. We're also offering you an opportunity to meet with and provide feedback to the private developers, the planners for the area, and city staff so that we can get feedback and information from you on the different projects and the efforts that we're making in the Bridge Street District. So in order to get moving forward, at this time I would like to introduce and ask Terry Fogler to the podium. And Terry tonight will review our agenda for the meeting and also provide the background for the Bridge Street District. Terry is the staff lead on the development of the Bridge Street District, and Terry was here as city manager when the Bridge Street District initiative became a city council goal. So with that, I'd like to introduce Terry.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Marcia. To give you a brief sense of the things that we want to accomplish tonight, I will start, give you a little context here for the Bridge Street planning effort to date so that we understand kind of what got us to this piece, a little more of that planning effort. I'm going to have Marty Saperstein, who for council this year conducted kind of our citizen surveys to share some of the applicable parts of those surveys that relate to what you're seeing tonight with you. Marty is also then going to, throughout this evening's event, ask for your feedback with regard to some of what you're seeing this evening to continue that input. City Council about a month or so ago asked us to begin a process of sharing the state of planning with the community. We proposed this community forum this evening, which was approved, and there'll be a series of other venues, obviously, these projects move forward. We'll then touch base, have Darren Meyer touch base on the public infrastructure and Riverfront Park, which I think are probably the most dynamic elements of the public infrastructure that we're looking at, which includes the pedestrian bridge. And then we want to share with you for the first time tonight, and you'll be the first seeing this from Planning Commission, Council, number of staff in terms of how recent some of these things are, some of the development ideas and concepts that are emerging for the private properties, the largest of which is the Crawford Hoeing developments located along the east side of the river. And Nelson Yoder will lead that presentation with representatives of the design firm. And then Jerry Bird, who's got a project that he's been working on and advancing on the west side of the river, will share with you the most current thinking on that private development. In all these cases, it's important to understand how they relate to the proposed public infrastructure, because there are very close connections here between the parks, the pedestrian bridge, where roads get relocated to, that impact the manner and nature and character of the development, as also the timing of the development. And then we'll touch base a bit on the next steps and finalize it with continuation of the forum and what we want to hope to accomplish with the forum in the atrium. We've got five stations set up. There's one that's staffed by the Dublin planning staff to just answer any question you might have regarding the Bridge Street planning efforts and initiatives in general. We've got a station on the public infrastructure, staffed by our engineering staff and various engineering consultants that can address and discuss any questions you may have regarding roads, roundabouts, other public infrastructure improvements. On there is a large station with Crawford Hoeing that'll have many representatives from the developer, their design team, and others, again, who can ask questions, solicit input, comments from you all regarding those projects. Jerry Bird will have a station out there regarding his initiative as well. And the last station will be on the parks, because we think that's at the right stage right now to get a better sense of the kind of things that ought to be located within these river parks. And really want to encourage your input, questions. You'll notice and get more information on the comment cards. There'll be even opportunities after tonight's evening's meeting for more online input for these efforts. And Council has encouraged us to do that both in these venues as well as through the more formal regulatory reviews that'll be following in the future. Just by way of brief background on the Bridge Street District, this highlighted area shows you the geography of the Bridge Street District. It accommodates about 6% of Dublin's land area. If you really look at those sites that are prepared and ready for development or redevelopment, it's probably less than 2% of Dublin's land area, probably 300 acres we assess. And you'll see some of the key pieces located along the river presented for you this evening. Also includes, obviously, as key features, the historic district and the Scioto River. In terms of the Bridge Street planning effort that began in 2009, we started by engaging a series of experts and speakers to come to the city and help us understand, for example, what are the kind of demographics that are going to be driving real estate development in communities and impacting communities like Dublin in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Dublin's been acknowledged for how well planned and how well prepared it was for the nature and character development that took place over the last 30 or 40 years. But these experts told us it's going to be significantly different, that the drivers that created the demand for the large amounts of single-family detached housing are weakening significantly. The major growth in types of households is single-person households. Areas that were commented on by Carol Coletta looked at issues of economic competitiveness, how companies are increasingly looking at environments where young mobile talent wants to live. It's following the talent more than it is following where the CEO wants to live, which it was back in the 70s and 80s. Got a lot of input with regard to the various issues here confronting Dublin's future, and looked at the opportunities for creating the kind of environments that would get a positive reinforcement of both the economic development as well as build upon kind of the kernel of historic district that we have that had become so popular in terms of a walkable setting with restaurants and take far better advantage of the river. A series of public venues were held. A lot of input was secured through that process with some key messages, as you can see up there, emerged from that planning process. And it resulted in Goody Clancy assisting the city, demonstrating some of the kind of images that it meant to convert, for example, of you looking east on 161 in front of Oakland Nursery and its kind of current situation. What might it be in a more urban, walkable kind of form with developments that framed the road, created more pedestrian friendly environments, and obviously lined the streets with more walkable, vital activities. Similarly, took a look north on Riverside Drive. This is in front of the Bridgepoint Center, looking at the kinds of scenarios that could link the east and west side, take advantage of some of the parkland, and line those venues with a more urban form of development. In October of 2010, City Council adopted as a broad vision plan the documents that were prepared with Goody Clancy and others. This is a kind of a visual representation of the character of that vision plan. It's not that this reflects how a plan will develop, but I think key aspects of it in terms of the parks along the river, the relocated Riverside Drive, the critical importance that the grid plays as an element to foster the kind of walkable development that we're talking about and the kind of densities that we're talking about. And you will also see a significant lessening of the amount of surface parking that happens in the typical suburban environment that eats up so much of the land. Parking is handled in different ways here. But that happened in 2010. The other aspects that have happened since that time, the city engaged in a wide array of due diligence studies, looking at market assessments, impact on sewer and water systems, stormwater, transportation, what are the fiscal impacts, what are the zoning and regulatory needs to accommodate this, as well as a more focused look on this river corridor. And those have really led us to where we are this evening. The geography that we're focusing on within the River Corridor District is as is outlined in yellow here. And that's what you're going to be hearing both summaries on with regard to the status of those public improvements with a heavy emphasis on the parking, and then a presentation regarding some of the key private developments that are starting to be identified along that corridor. I'd like to now turn it over to Marty Saperstein of Saperstein Associates, who will get you oriented with regard to your feedback and share some results of previous surveys with you.
So it seemed to me that since this is a community forum, that we ought to encourage communications in both directions, but since our time with you tonight is so brief, we thought we needed to do this as efficiently as possible. So to that end, when you came in and registered, we gave everyone an audience response device, which we affectionately call clickers. Everybody have a clicker? Okay, so clicker works this way. Throughout the evening, I'm going to project questions on that screen over there. And for those of you who are too close to the screen, and for those of you who are too far from the screen, I will read the questions. Now, no one is arguing that these will reflect a representative sample of Dublin residents, but it will give us a sense of the room. And the beauty of it is this, that for some of the questions, I will show you instantly the results of your clicking, and you'll see how the person sitting next to you thinks. All right, so I want to warm us up a little. So take your clicker, and you'll see, so your age, we figure that's a pretty easy one. So find your age range and then just press the appropriate number. If in the course of this you age into the next category after you've pressed a button, just press the next button down. It's the last button that you press is the one that will be recorded. And I can tell that 55 of 6, 7 of you have already responded. So I'm going to wait until the number stops rotating up in the top right-hand corner. All right, we're at 165. I got a couple, oh no, 167. Come on, laggards, let's go here. Okay, 170. Okay, let's go to the next question. We're going to close polling. Do you live in Dublin? Just 2 options, yes or no. Man, you're much faster this time. Okay, great. 68, 169, 170. Oh, some of you, okay, 174, 5. Let's go to the next question. We've closed polling. New question, do you work in Dublin? Again, 1 is yes, 2 is no. It's like the lightning round. 71, 2, 3, 4, 5. Last of my warm-up questions. Okay, so how familiar are you with the city's vision for the Bridge Street District? So now you have 3 choices: very familiar, somewhat familiar, not too familiar. All righty, I can see, boy, 180. Okay, so now I can see you can rest your clicker finger for a minute. And now as we close the polling, go to the next screen. Now I want to ask you a question relevant to tonight's topic, and then I want to show you the results. So given what you've seen outside, what you've read in the paper, what you know from chats over the fence, how enthusiastic are you about the Bridge Street District? Very, somewhat, not. 175, couple more. All right, so now if we get the technology to work, you can see that 68% of you sitting here said very, 27% said somewhat, and then a handful of folks said not enthusiastic at all. All right. So as Terry alluded to before, earlier this year in February, we conducted a community attitude survey. Anybody participate in that? Well, I won't go there. Oh yeah, see there, somebody participated. So this is actually real data. And we did this on the phone. We interviewed 400 people. And we asked a variety of questions, a series of which had to do with the Bridge Street District. And those are the findings that I want to review really quickly with you tonight. So residents were told of 9 potential community initiatives, and then they were encouraged to identify their highest priority. And these were initiatives suggested by city staff, city officials. And what you'll see here is that for a plurality of residents, improving the flow of traffic was their top priority. But you'll see right behind it was implementing the Bridge Street District. And you can see some of the other options or other priorities that we tested. And this reflected what a resident thought should be the highest priority. And then we said, well, what about parkland? And one of the things you may have noticed on the previous slide was that acquiring additional parkland was not broadly popular, getting new parkland. But if the city did pursue it, residents favor river frontage and natural wooded areas over athletic fields and pavilions. And I think you'll see some of that reflected in some of the concepts tonight. Half of Dublin residents consider themselves familiar with the plans for the Bridge Street District, but in all fairness, we lucked out because while we were interviewing February 7th to 17th, there was some really strong coverage in both This Week and the Dispatch immediately before. And then residents were queried about 4 components of the Bridge Street District. So this was highest priority. We allowed folks to mention more than one, and you can see here that more parkland along the Scioto River, including a pedestrian bridge, was mentioned by 48% of the people. And then civic activities, including green space and a plaza, was highest priority for 46% of the people. And then the options below were scored highest by a smaller percentage of folks. And then residents were asked, what would make the Bridge Street District appealing to young professionals? And you'll see the results. You'll say, why did you bother asking? All right, so I need not say any more other than to say that beyond restaurants, bars, and nightlife, housing, walkability, meaning you could walk around without a car, and shopping also scored highly. So with that as preface, now we have some presentations, and I want to introduce Darren Meyer from MKSK, and then, oh, here you are. Here's the clicker. And then when he's done, I'll come back.
We're going to give a brief overview of the projects in the public realm. The reason I say public realm, in the vision for the Scioto River Corridor, the Bridge Street District, there's really ultimately no line between the public realm and the private realm. The goal is to create one district which has some energy and excitement and builds on the strength of downtown Dublin. From a practical standpoint, the city is leading the effort on the public projects on the public realm, and you'll hear a little bit from some of the development teams on what they're developing in terms of the private environment. The public realm includes things like the roads, sidewalks, bike paths, the utilities and services that are going to serve the private development, and some of the parks and public open space and the pedestrian bridge, which is a key feature that's been envisioned for this. I'm going to orient you briefly here to a plan with my cursor. This is the Scioto River. I've turned north to the left. The Riverside Drive, if you follow my hand, runs along the top side of the river here, and then you have High Street here just below and 161 here. One of the first moves that we looked at with the idea of creating a district and neighborhood that builds on historic Dublin and builds on the Scioto River was, can we create the real estate to engage the river? Right now, Riverside Drive sits right along a ridge, a cliff, that runs down to the river. And so the first idea was to take Riverside Drive and shift it to the east to create some real estate. The second move was at the intersection of 161 and Riverside Drive here in the upper right-hand corner. It's an intersection that has some challenges from safety and congestion standpoint. And the idea was to look at the option of a roundabout at this intersection to improve both those conditions and to help minimize the footprint of ultimately what that intersection would need to be. Next, we looked at how we bring people to the river. I'll talk several times throughout this about what an incredible amenity the Souder River is in downtown Dublin and how incredibly untapped that resource is at the moment. And when we talk about the park, we're talking about both the east and west side of the river, and there's really interesting variety of geographies within the footprint that we're talking about as well. Then how do we connect these two sides? For those of you who have walked across the Bridge Street Bridge, there's a sidewalk across that bridge. It's a long walk. It's not terribly pleasant. We need to figure out a way to not just accommodate movement across the river, but to encourage it and facilitate movement so that when we look at what is really strong about historic Dublin here and potentially what's very strong on the east side, how can we bring those two together? And with the pedestrian bridge, how do we make sure that we land it in the nucleus of activity on each side? You'll hear a little bit about how the private development falls into this. They're inseparable when we talk about roads and infrastructure and parks and public space and the private buildings. They need to be thought of together. They have been designed together. And then the ultimate goal is the idea that if you look at the small circle in the lower right-hand corner, and an informal survey question, but if you ask people what they thought of the civic core of Dublin, they would probably think of the intersection of High Street and Bridge Street. And that has a great appeal, a great ambiance to it. The idea is that we want to build on that. We want to build on that strength. We want to complement it. We want to take what's good about that and expand that civic core by using the Souder River as the thread that connects these two. When we look specifically at these projects, I want to give you some of the key features of each. Again, we're looking at the same orientation. The river's not quite as blue in this image. What I've highlighted in red to the top is the proposed relocation for Riverside Drive. We have done significant analysis on the relocation of this road. Everything from looking at the traffic engineering aspects, grades and slopes, utility connections, where the bedrock is, looking at what the adequate size of a park would be to serve good public need for the community, and also looking at what the private development footprints are to the east of that and making sure that they're feasible. We spent considerable time looking at that, and the idea is that Riverside Drive is not just getting shifted and relocated, but it's being transformed in terms of its character. Right now it's an arterial, it carries a lot of traffic, it will continue to serve an important traffic function, but part of this transformation is to turn Riverside Drive from what feels like sort of a suburban arterial into more of an urban, walkable street that's more pedestrian friendly. And there are a couple key intersections that we'll talk about in a little bit in terms of accessing from the private development and from the eastern neighborhoods to the river and to the park. I do have a small highlight here on the west side. For those of you who are familiar with North Riverview Street, it's sort of tucked away on the west side down there, but it's very important to have public access and public frontage onto public parks. And North Riverview will become the new interface between historic Dublin and the river corridor and the park that's envisioned there. We mentioned the roundabout. The roundabout briefly is going to serve, it's going to help with safety issues, it's going to help with congestion issues. I mentioned that compared to a signalized intersection, it's actually a more compact footprint, which is going to help with the environmental impact of this. And we're also preserving the southern bypass, which has both a traffic function and sort of a historic and cultural, and a lot of people just like the bypass, including me. So that is a component that's going to remain. There is a network that's being developed here to create the framework for these neighborhoods to emerge. And this street network is designed to be walkable. It's designed to create a grid that has feasible development footprints, comfortable streetscapes with walks and street trees, bike paths and cycle tracks. We want to make sure that we can move people between the features and amenities and destinations that are being created both on this side of the river and the west through this network of roads. The park, again, is a pretty significant piece here, as you can see from this footprint. That's both the east and west side of the river. And as I mentioned before, even in the wintertime, it is very, very difficult to see the river itself. When all the leaves are off the trees, it's still a challenge. When the leaves are on the trees, it's virtually impossible unless you're on the 161 bridge. I think one of the most exciting developments that's going to come out of this is the fact that people are going to be able to see the river, they're going to be able to engage the river, use it in ways that we've not been able to use it before, and that engagement that came out of the community opinion survey and other information that we've learned from the community is a key feature of the park. And lastly, the pedestrian bridge, but not least. And as I mentioned before, we want to make sure that this pedestrian bridge really links activity on both sides of the river. It's currently, the thinking is that North Street, which is just a half block off high, the landing on the west side, and where Dale Drive ties in on the east side, are really the core areas that are going to allow people to move across the river and have some immediate impact and some immediate activity and excitement on either side. I'm going to jump right into the park. When we got into the park design, before we could start coming up with ideas, we needed to go through a process that said, what are the features, what are the amenities, what are we going to put into this park, what are the components? And the process we went through, we call it a programming process. We looked at several things. We looked at both nationally and internationally, what are the best urban parks around the world, and what are the lessons that we can learn from those and bring to Dublin. We did some research. Parks have positive economic impacts on adjacent real estate, and we looked at what features of parks have the most impact for the community. And lastly, we had several forums where we touched base with the community to get some feedback in terms of what we would like to see out there. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of this. The same orientation, the river here. We have 161 right here, Riverside Drive, where the hand is moving along right here. Again, this is 161. The white outline includes some parkland that exists. One of the beauties of this park is it's going to connect to existing features. We have the Indian Run Trail here to the west. We have connections to the north and south that are critically important. And as I mentioned before, there's some stunning natural beauty that frankly you have to wade through a lot of poison ivy and honeysuckle to get an appreciation of. But these are some of the features that we want to make sure that we highlight through this park design. There are some components that you can see here. A key component of this park when we shift Riverside Drive is an open lawn area that allows for, as you can see in the lower left-hand corner, everything from yoga to kickball leagues to large festivals. You can fit from blanket seating, you could fit over 10,000 people in this space. For standing room only events, you could fit north of 20,000 people. We have a continuous path that runs north-south along the river, along the ridge where current Riverside Drive is. The opportunities for climbing, there's some great exposed existing rock and the potential for some constructed rock climbing. Some areas where you can have a little sneak peek out to the river that does not include walking across the pedestrian bridge. At the east landing, and I apologize for moving quickly here, I want to keep this moving, so apologize for the speed of this. This is going to be a significant area of activity where we have, as you'll hear, a lot of the energy in the private development. You have the pedestrian bridge coming across. This is the major access into the park. And ideas that are emerging there may include a small cafe, the chance to have a couple of lemonade or a sandwich, small concerts, a variety of things. On the west side, we're in historic Dublin, and there's a certain architectural character and a certain approach to this that is going to be sensitive to the character of historic Dublin and how we access the river and what the nature is of that design. And this again shows some of the great natural features. We will have access for watercraft, canoe and kayak, the ability to enter the park from the river, and connections to the north and south along the river corridor are very important. Lastly, these are some of the images of the park. Again, the canoe launch that I mentioned on the west side. You can see the proposed pedestrian bridge here and the 161 bridge in the background. This is actually based on a photograph. This is an existing exposed rock area. May or may not be able to climb it. I tried climbing it and failed, but could be fun to experiment with. These are some areas, again, you're looking to the south, and you can see the pedestrian bridge in 161, where we have the opportunity on these hillsides where it flattens out to sort of tuck some moments into the woods, into the wooded areas, and have a place to get away and feel like you're in a different environment. And again, this is the ridge trail that runs along where the existing roadway is, with views that have been opened up to the river. And you can also see this is the east landing. So if you're coming east across the pedestrian bridge towards the new development that you see in the background, this is the potential idea for a small cafe here with some outdoor seating and some views of the park to the left. And then on the west landing, where you can see just a piece of Jerry's Bird's new development, which he'll speak about in a little bit, and the approach to historic Dublin on this side. The last piece that I'm going to show you are some ideas that are emerging for the pedestrian bridge. It's a gorgeous bridge. It's about 700-foot span. It's a suspension bridge. The deck is going to be 14 or 15 feet wide to accommodate pedestrians and bicycles. It's got the opportunity for amazing lighting and great night and evening effect. And again, as I mentioned before, the importance of this bridge is not so much just the connection that it makes from A to B, but that it's a destination itself. It's a long span to cross. It's important to get people across the river, and to be able to have an experience on that bridge is a key component.
So, with clickers in hand, I've got 2 questions for you. Both of them will be on the screen behind me. So, think about what Darren just presented. Do these concepts, in your mind, reflect the goals of the Bridge Street District? So, click 1 for yes, click 2 for no. And when we hit 175-ish or so, let's see what the response is. All right, let's see. Let's close polling and let's see. Okay, so 91% of you, 9 out of 10 of you said yes. The 9%, and you know who you are, said no. Okay, one more question, and this is a multiple response question. You can click 2 numbers. So which of these amenities are you most likely to use? So number 1 is launch, and that's the river access with canoes and kayaking. You saw an image to that effect. And then climbing the exposed cliffs and the climbing wall. And 3 is the east landing with the cafes and restroom and the stage for events. And 4 is the ravine, and that's woodlands and river trails. And then 5 is the green with the capital G. It's that space, that informal lawn where people can gather. So click 2 of those numbers. And once you've done that, we'll take a look and see what you're most interested in, what you're most likely to use. Alrighty, let's take a look. Look at that. So 65% of you said the cafes, the restroom, the stage for events, and then second was the informal, nope, second was 58% the ravine, woodland, and river trails. Boy, not a lot of folks want to climb the rock wall in this room. Huh, interesting. Okay. So now I want to introduce Nelson Yoder, and he's going to come and talk about private development concepts.
My name is Nelson Yoder. I'm a principal with Crawford Hoying Development Partners. Thrilled to be here tonight to show you a little bit about what we're expecting for the private development portion of the project. As Darren said, he was focused on the public aspects of the project. What you're going to hear from me about this evening is the private portion. Crawford Hoying is a company that many of you are probably familiar with, but for those of you that are not, I'll share just a couple of quick bullet points for you. Crawford Hoying is a full-service real estate company, over 175 employees based right here in Dublin. 3 principals of Crawford Hoying Development Partners all live in Dublin as well, so we're all very vested in the community and in its future. To touch on full-service real estate company, these are the different divisions of Crawford Hoying. Between development, real estate, living, and management, it's a company with a breadth of experience in all aspects of real estate. Bracket Builders is also a sister company. What this has enabled us to do over the course of this project, as we've been planning it, is really understand all aspects of a very complicated project, from land acquisition to leasing to construction. Building on a strong foundation, really our core goal and our core mission in Crawford Hoying Development Partners is to create high-quality mixed-use projects in sustainable, walkable communities, just like the one that you're going to see tonight. We learned more about the city's vision for the Bridge Street corridor, and we realized how much that aligned with our own vision and our own corporate mission. And we really see the success of this district as being critical to Dublin's future, as Terry touched on momentarily. And yeah, as people are very vested in Dublin, we all have a sincere interest in making sure that Dublin remains strong over the course of the next generation. We really see a unique opportunity here to expand on historic Dublin, to bolster historic Dublin, and really to engage the river. Our vision for the future really started through the course of that shared vision with the city. And over the course of the past year, we've acquired about 40 acres of land in the heart of Dublin. And we've worked cooperatively with the city to create this vision that you're going to see tonight for a world-class environment that's geared towards young professionals and also for empty nesters where they can live, work, and play. And we're not the only ones who have this vision. We're not crazy. We've been out in the marketplace, going out and ascertaining interest in the marketplace. We have found very, very strong interest from very significant office users. Cameron Mitchell has committed to putting 2 restaurants as part of this Bridge Park development that you're going to see tonight, as well as backing the convention space you're going to see tonight as well. David Patel and Indus Hotels is going to get behind the hotel that you're going to see later on tonight as well. So we're excited to have many great partners on board with this project as we see it move forward. And really the project both relies on all the public improvements that you're seeing earlier. Without those public improvements, these private projects don't happen. They're really inseparable. And I think that this is a scenario where we really do have a 1 + 1 = 3, with the city stepping forward to do some great public projects and our team stepping forward to enhance that with some great private development as well. So we engaged a world-class partner to help hone and refine the vision. In addition to the world-class consultants that Dublin had already hired and brought on their team, we did an international search. We found Elkus Manfredi, based in Boston, to help us really make this all that it could possibly be. We selected them, and we're going to turn over the presentation to David Manfredi, partner at Elkus Manfredi, to let him walk you through the vision tonight. So with that, I will turn it over to David and let him show you what we're so excited about.
Thank you, Nelson. Good evening, everybody. I'm delighted to be in Dublin, Ohio this evening and have this opportunity to share some of our thoughts with you. I want to start simply by assuring you that what we have been working on over the past few months is really very consistent with the vision that you've heard about over a number of many more months, as Terry described. And that is that it's a vision about a mixed-use environment that includes multiple uses: residential, office, hotel, retail, restaurants. That's important because it means it will bring many different kinds of visitors and guests. It will bring people over 7 days a week. It will be an environment that is truly vibrant. Second, really big planning principle that we have completely endorsed in our work going forward is the notion that this is pedestrian friendly. It is about pedestrian. It's about creating streets with uses that engage pedestrians on that street level. We want people to come. We want them to get out of their cars and walk. Third is the really big idea, and you've heard so much from Darren about the public infrastructure. And the third big principle is connection, the connection of private development to public infrastructure. It's the streets, but really it's about the open space. It's really about engaging private development and all of that public open space, leveraging that public open space, taking advantage of it. I'm going to give you a real quick orientation. Thankfully, we're in the same orientation as everybody else, and so I think everybody knows where we are. The river, obviously, the reconfigured Riverside Drive, 161, 270 off here, way off here to the left. And most importantly, as orientation, is the existing Bridgepoint Shopping Center. What you'll see immediately is this notion of a grid of streets. And Terry talked about a grid and the importance of grid as kind of urban organizer. And what we're suggesting is that based on some of the existing pieces, thinking about a grid that has a hierarchy of streets. So where Dale Drive is today, what we're calling Park Avenue, a new street that connects to the terminus of the new bridge. And this is all about making connection between the new and the historic Dublin. The obviously improved Riverside, an improved Mooney, an improved Teller Ridge, and a series of new streets, all intended to create a pedestrian-oriented environment, walkable blocks. I'm going to take you through uses, and I talked about the importance of a mix of uses because it's about options, and it's about attracting a variety of different kinds of guests. So again, the proposed roundabout and where the Bridgepoint Shopping Center is today. And just generally, if you look at the entire site, the 40 acres that Nelson described, in the broadest of terms, on the southern edge of the site, you see the most colors, the most variety of uses. That means office and hotel, retail and restaurants, kind of clustered all along the edge of Riverside, all along the edge of the park, all along the edge of the river. And then you see a greater concentration of residential. But there's residential here as well, residential above that retail and restaurants, above that fitness. And so there's always that integration. I also want to point out another site, which is the 90 and 100 North High Street site. We're not going to talk about it too much tonight, but Darren mentioned the importance of this edge as public edge along Public Park. This is another development site, another mixed-use opportunity for residential, retail, and office. So now I've focused in on the southern edge of the site, and I'm going to take you on a very quick walk from the southern edge over all the way into what we think of now as Phase 1. And Phase 1 doesn't necessarily mean that it's all built concurrently, but it is the first phase of development. And so I described the reconfigured Mooney, reconfigured Dale, now called Park Avenue, and those are kind of the primary streets. And then these secondary and tertiary streets. And so starting from the south, an office building, about 140,000 square feet of office, new hotel with 200 keys and convention space. And what you'll notice is the buildings are oriented to the park and to the river. In fact, even the convention space in this very conceptual planning is oriented so that the guests arrive off of this second roundabout, off of Mooney, and they come out and they get a view. And they get a view from the pre-function space, and they get a view from the meeting rooms. It is all about making those connections back to park, back to river, back to historic Dublin. Moving along this new series of streets, Park Avenue really becomes the pedestrian spine. It is, as I mentioned, the end of the iconic bridge. You cross Riverside, and what the yellow and red represent is restaurants and shops. A double-loaded street of restaurants and shops, a street with really quite pedestrian-oriented metrics. What I mean by that is very wide sidewalks, street trees, cycle track, parallel parking that buffers and protects pedestrians. This is about creating an environment that you walk out of one shop, you see the restaurant across the street. You get that sense of oscillation. And then a side street, which has residential along one edge. The big purple is 30,000 square feet of fitness. Parking always kind of buffered with residential, so the parking is really obscured from the pedestrian. And at the very northern edge of this first phase of development is a grocery at about 20,000 square feet with parking immediately accessible as a kind of anchor along this whole edge of development. So from south to north, office, hotel, fitness with residential above, shops and retail, grocery, a series of different kind of uses that are going to attract a number of different folks over the course of a day and a week and a year. On an upper level plan, again, the same plan, but now I'm looking at upper floors. The office is 6 stories of office. 5 stories of office. The hotel is 6 stories of guest rooms. And then above the retail, above the grocery, are residences. A mix of different types, primarily smaller one-bedroom, accommodating the kind of residence that Nelson and Darren have described. So now I'm going to take you on a little bit of a walking tour. And it's going to be a very quick one, but I want to make just 3 points. Our guidelines here are, 1, it should be diverse. We want architecture where different buildings, hotel and office, feel different, organic, the way a city built over time, the kind of character it has. We also want it to be legible, and what I mean by that is office is different than hotel, is different than residential, and you should read that as a pedestrian. Gives you a comfort level, makes it just a friendlier place. And then third is, we want to be contextual in our materials, use high quality materials, the stone that is so much a part of what Dublin is all about. But we also want to be modern. We want this to be a modern architectural expression, and you'll see that as I move through these. And I'm going to move through these sketches very quickly because I want to re-emphasize these are conceptual. They are about scale and massing. They are about rhythm, the rhythm of facades. And it's about this kind of legibility and diversity of architecture. So first I'm looking north from the roundabout, the office building here on the right. And what we're suggesting here is that stone that you are so familiar with, that stone that to me means Dublin. In terms of a cladding material, it may be stone at the base, it may be cast stone above, but a color and a texture that is warm and familiar to Dublin. And then you're looking at that plaza that's shared between office and hotel, the convention meeting spaces of the hotel, and the guest rooms, which were oriented in plan so that every guest room gets a view of the river, a view of the park. Again, that connection between built environment and open space. The second view is looking east at the termination of the pedestrian bridge, and this is really the front door. This is where the connection happens as you come across the bridge as a pedestrian or a bicyclist. Riverside is in front of you. Retail, shops, restaurants at the base that can spill out. Residences above. A scale of the street that from street wall to street wall is about 90 feet, but a relatively urban scale of the street itself, meaning it's only 38 feet from curb to curb. So lots of investment in sidewalk, in street trees, in cycle track, in the pedestrian. And you're seeing color and material that is warm, that is also diverse. So bigger buildings are made to look a little bit smaller by the diversity of those materials, the use of those materials. This is a long view along Riverside. I'm now looking south, the park in the foreground, the grocery store here facing out onto the street, the access to the parking for that grocery store. But again, warm materials, a kind of traditional urban street wall, meaning that buildings have a base that is mercantile. They have a middle with balconies, operable windows. They have a kind of attic story, but always in a modern expression. And then a view looking west down what we're calling Park Avenue. So what you're seeing is the view to the bridge, the new pedestrian bridge. Riverside Drive is back here, the park is here, and historic Dublin is beyond. And again, now I think you can really see that commitment to the pedestrian. The wide sidewalks, the cycle tracks, the street trees, and also the diversity of architecture. We've included a loft building. The notion that there's a diversity of housing, there are options. And again, options will attract a more diverse audience, a more diverse guest. And a diversity of materials, a diversity of rhythms in order to create a very organic, lively place. And then a view, and I should have said, if you look at my little key in the lower right-hand corner, you can always tell where we are in the plan. Now I've gone a little farther north, and I'm into that more residential district, which is of a little lower scale. These are 3-story townhouses. That street wall dimension that I described as 90 feet is here at 60 feet. But still parallel parking, wide sidewalks. You'll notice that these are very traditional kinds of massing, heights, kind of the width of the individual buildings, but in a modern expression, but in a traditional palette. We want that traditional palette. We want the warmth of those materials, the familiarity of those materials, but at the same time, we're building a new environment, a new place. And then lastly, I'm going to give you the big overview. And again, please don't take our hard lines for being too final. This really is very conceptual. We look forward to everybody's input. But what we intend to convey here is a sense of the quality of the place, the connection of built form to park and to river, the amount of views that they enjoy, these view corridors that are perpendicular to the river that will gather these residents and bring them down to the river on a regular basis, the active edge at the street, the active edge at this new street, which is the termination of the bridge, the continuity and connection between new and old Dublin, the opportunity to build a new neighborhood, connected, sustainable, that's an opportunity for development over a number of years. We look forward to all of your input, and I'm sure many of your questions. Thank you.
I'm back. So now that you've seen that presentation, I have a question for you. So do these concepts, what you've just seen on these two screens, do they reflect the goals of the Bridge Street District? So now you can click a 1 for yes, 2 for no. And let me show you the results when we get up to about 170, 158, 59. All right, we seem to be stuck there. Let's go and close polling. 3/4 of you said yes. 26% of you, 1/4 said no. I've got one more question. And this is a multiple response. You can click 2 numbers. Which of these features would you most like to see in this project? So we've got restaurants is a 1, and then 2 is boutique shops and galleries, 3 is a fitness center, 4 is nightlife, entertainment venues, 5 is a specialty grocer, and 6 is a hotel with a conference center. So you can choose 2 of those, top 2. And once you've done that, I want to share with you the results. Here, whoop, almost. Okay, let's take a look. Let's close polling. Boy, why am I not surprised? Restaurants, lots of interest in restaurants, followed by boutique shops, followed by hotel and conference center. Oh, I can't believe fitness center, only 2% of you. This is a, boy, this is a fit crowd I'm looking at. Okay, so now the third presentation, I'm going to ask Jerry Bird to, oh, here he comes.
Good evening. Glad to be here. What you have to do now is go from 40 acres and lots of square feet down to a 1-acre site on the west side of the river in the historic district of Dublin. And this site sits right on the river, just north of Bridge Street. It presently is on Blacksmith Lane, essentially Blacksmith Lane, which is the north-south street right here. It's an alley at this point. And North Riverview, which is this existing street right here. The site has been acquired. It's under one ownership, and we're moving through the design review process at this time. The vision for this site was a combination of uses that were consistent with the vision of Bridge Street Corridor being residential and providing a variety of residential to what Dublin presently has. So we have condominiums. There are 27 condominiums. We have a parking, which nobody wants to see parking, particularly in the historic district. So we're tucking the parking under the buildings, and the grades work very well such that the Bridge Street and Blacksmith Lane sides, the parking will not be visible at all. It'll be tucked under the buildings. The uses then, we would have a retail and restaurant facing Bridge Street, Again, to maintain that activity, you know, we've got a lot of visibility on Bridge Street. We've got views to the river and to the woods. So great patios, great deck opportunities with that retail space. And then again, on the first floor, residential behind. We're letting the commercial be a buffer, if you will, from Bridge Street to the rest of the project. Also, from the parking, for the condominiums, we're anticipating a secure parking level where you can pull in to a secure parking lot, hit an elevator, go up to your floor, and likewise exiting. We do have parking here and on Blacksmith Lane, public parking for the restaurant and office space above the restaurant. So we have 2 levels of uses, restaurant and office on Bridge Street, which is in keeping with the scale and character of Bridge Street. We want to keep it a low scale, and we have 3 levels of residential behind that. Floor-to-floor heights in residential are less than the commercial, so it'll be tucked into similar heights, and that's the concept that we're proposing. What we also see is that this is the landing site for the bridge, and as Terry and David and Darren talked about, this is the connection point to the downtown. So launching point to the bridge, and again, some of the images, a very exciting element to that parkland, and these units will enjoy that view and that level of activity as well. So the concept visually, this view is looking as if you were on coming westbound on Bridge Street, and so this shows the 2-story component being restaurant, first floor, office on the second. The concept here is to be contextual to Dublin, to have it be more residential in scale, utilizing the stone and brick materials, the residential 3-foot by 6-foot or 5-foot high windows, to break that scale down, and to have a variety of roof forms so that it feels like it's a part of the downtown architecture. And then from this view as well, you can see North River view, you can see the woods towards the river, and then the 3-story component of residential, which again would be balconies, decks, a lot of that outdoor types of space off those units that will allow people to enjoy the river views and the scenery towards the river and the parks. Additionally, this view would be looking across Bridge. This is being Bridge Street here, and then Blacksmith Lane again, which will become a real street instead of an alley. It'll have parallel parking on it, and then we'll be able to develop the sidewalk space, the public space that can connect the downtown context, if you will, the pedestrian grid, through to the site, to the river, and then reinforce the connection to the pedestrian bridge. So again, you see the 2-story scale, which will be, again, intimate, relatively consistent to Dublin, and then you'll see the residential from there. So that's the concept that we're pursuing. We're in the process of going through a design review and approvals at this time. We could be in a position to start construction within about a year, 15 months, something like that, weather dependent, because we're bumping into winter. But about a year away, and we'd be able to start. Thank you.
So now I've got one question, which will appear on the screen behind me. So here, do these concepts, what you've just seen, do they reflect the goals of the Bridge Street District? So press in a 1 or a 2, and we'll see the results. Up to 150. All right, let's close polling. Let's take a look here. So here, 77% said yes, 23% said no. Okay, so you can rest your clicking fingers for a moment. Now I want to turn this over to Terry to summarize, conclude.
So where do we go from here? The public improvements that we've shared with you tonight, our goal is to complete what we're calling the preliminary engineering, preliminary design elements of those by the end of this year. There's quite a team that is having to be coordinated. Representatives from a number of those are here this evening out there, but we should have the preliminary design, which should refine cost estimates, give us a much better sense of constructability and related issues by the end of this year. The private development, of course, is completing its market analysis, financing, the pre-leasing that it needs to do. Obviously, beginning to share concepts, get reaction to those concepts, like in venues that you're participating in this evening. It has to go through its development review process. They have not started that yet, but I think they anticipate doing that once input is secure and they get a sense of some of the questions that need to get addressed. Beyond the boards and commissions and other reviews, there are development agreements with the city council ultimately need to be approved. Again, those negotiations would need to start once the development concept is fairly well understood and generally agreed upon. So there's a lot to happen, but there's a lot that's been going on. The last 4, 5, 6 months really reflects the product of this effort here. You can see, for example, as you look at these things, just the issues of relocated riverside drives, roundabouts, and just to give you a sense, that roundabout, the center of it, is 10 feet above the pavement today. Thinking how that relates to the parcel that's being planned and developed where Bridge Street is today is significant. Thinking how we maintain traffic when these various construction and improvement projects are being done are things we want that preliminary engineering to do for us. There's lots of coordination issues. There may be opportunities, for example, for some of the earth movement that needs to take place on the hillsides to help elevate the road and the park appropriately. So we need to understand all those. But a lot of that public-private coordination that you've seen reflected here tonight will continue going forward, and there'll be many opportunities along the way for continued input on this project. With that, I think Marty has one more final question. I would encourage you at the end here, all the representatives you've seen here today and the complete members of their team will be at the 5 stations we've mentioned out there. So I'm sure this has triggered questions. I think there'll be lots of opportunities for you to speak to someone with the development companies, with their consulting teams, with our consultants, and lots of city staff out there to address your questions. Encourage you also, again, fill out the comment cards, and I think Marty will reemphasize that. This, although it's live streaming, I believe now, it'll also be available, I believe, on demand for those who you'd want to share this with and see it, as well as the graphics. And we're going to continue to provide online opportunities to seek continued input from this and more detailed comments, obviously, going forward. And we'll continue to seek opportunities for that. Marty?
So I have one more question, but before I ask it, just a couple of things. First, thank you very much for coming out tonight, spending some time listening to what the plans are at this point. I know everyone who presented is really appreciative to have so much of your time on a weeknight. That's the first thing. Second thing, after I ask the question and you exit, there's going to be a box. Please leave your clicker in the box. If you remember, when you registered, you gave us your phone number and your email address, so we know how to track you down if one walks off. And you'll see the number on the back. You own it. What else? As you exit also, there'll be comment cards, as Terry suggested, and little golf pencils. We won't be counting the golf pencils when you leave. But please take a comment card and either fill it out here with the golf pencil, or you'll notice on the bottom there's a web address you can go to and type in a comment as well. And then also, as Terry said, all of the folks who presented will be out in the atrium, and they will want to hear things you liked and were pleased about, but I'm sure they'll also want to hear things that concern you, so please don't be bashful. And my experience is, folks in Dublin, not bashful. So you'll have an opportunity to do that. Okay, last question on the screen in front of me. As a whole, given everything you've seen tonight, how enthusiastic are you about the overall vision for the river corridor shared with you this evening? 1, you're very enthusiastic. Somewhat enthusiastic is a 2. Not enthusiastic is a 3. You know, if I could do a drum roll, I would do one. We're up to 156, 7. All right, let's close polling. Take a look. So almost 7 out of 10 of you are very enthusiastic. 1 in 4 somewhat enthusiastic and 6% of you not enthusiastic. So I especially hope that 6% of you get to voice your opinions with the folks out in the atrium. Again, thank you very much. Trade your clicker for a comment card, and we'll see you out there.